Here's a quick video showing you how to create a virtual network in VirtualBox. It's a really great feature of this system and allows you to explore and experiment with networking without actually having any networking equipment. The software is available at the website virtualbox.org. I believe it'll run on most platforms, and it's a pretty nice user-friendly system to work with. When we're doing any kind of work with networking, you usually should always start with a network diagram. Without a network diagram, you're kind of it's easy to make missteps and get confused about what you're doing. Even if it seems like a trivial assignment, well, everything in technology ends up becoming more complicated than it might seem at first. So always start with a network diagram. The network diagram we're going to be working with is here. We're going to have simple 3 pieces to our network, and I call this a network building block. It sort of resembles the basic functionality of almost every network in the world, so if you understand the concepts at work here in this system, you can understand most of networking. We're going to have one router that's going to connect us to the wide area network. That's the regular office LAN that we have available here. And then inside of this router, I'm going to have my own private network. I have 2 Windows clients, and all 3 of these devices are actually virtual machines running in VirtualBox. Now I've already added the IP addresses for these devices based on my setup, but I'll show you where all that information came from and how it works. And I'll show you what it looks like in VirtualBox right now. So if I open up VirtualBox, I have my 3 virtual machines running. This is Windows 1. It's a regular old Windows 1 desktop. And I've actually already opened a command prompt and run the ipconfig command. It's going to show us the network configuration for this particular Windows computer. Its IP address 192.168.0.20. Alright, let's go get the other virtual machine. Here's Windows 2. It's just a clone of this virtual machine, and it has its own IP address on the same network, 192.168.0.21. And then the router, we're using the Endian router, and this is a community editions, freely downloadable, and it's really nice for experimenting. Sometimes it doesn't install properly in a virtual machine. We've seen students have trouble with that frequently, so it can be a bit frustrating to set up. If you're more experienced with networking, using something like pfSense is probably a better option. In any case, it's working perfectly fine here, and you can see it has this concept of the green zone and the red zone. The green zone is your local area network, the network that you're defining in the system. This is where my Windows PCs are located and connected to it. And then there is the outgoing connection, the uplink, the red link. This is the wide area network and whatever is above the router and the network diagram. Now in this case, it's receiving its IP address to this red link through DHCP. And I'll show you how that works. That's actually something internal to the VirtualBox system. And the green IP address is statically assigned. I assigned that for the gateway address for my network. Okay, so that's what it looks like with the virtual machines running, my 3 devices. So to build this, the first thing you need to do is to set up your virtual machines. You can install Windows or Linux or whatever operating system that you'd like to use from an ISO or install media, whatever it is that you have available. So I'm not going to, that's explained in another video. The Endian Firewall, if you Google the community version of Endian Firewall, you'll find the downloadable ISO for that. The installation is quite easy, but as I said, it does seem to be glitchy. Something about VirtualBox doesn't always like it, so if it boots to a black screen, that's the problem that we see sometimes. We have not resolved exactly what the problem is with the settings, but if it's not working, or if you want to have something a bit more modern, pfSense works wonderfully, also a free download. So you're going to set up those 3 devices. I'll show you what the configuration looks like for them. The Windows machine's quite straightforward. The router, though, requires a special setup. Then we're going to configure the networking, and obviously that's the real key to making this work. We'll show the documentation on the VirtualBox site for some of the networking options when we review that. Alright, so let's head back over to our virtual machines. I'll shut them down so that we can look at their configurations more easily. Always with the updates. And so here are my virtual machines, and I've got a few other from some other labs that I've done on this machine, so just disregard these first 2. Here's my Endian router, which is just now shutting off, and I have Windows 1 and Windows 2. So the Windows, these are a little bit more simple. We have just a typical configuration for your virtual machine, and down here in the networking section, you can see that I've selected internal network, and the internal network intnet. Take a closer look in the settings. Under network, you can see attached to, this is my adapter 1, internal network. There's a few different options here for networking in VirtualBox. NAT is the default option, and that'll basically put your virtual machine behind a router that VirtualBox creates for you. It doesn't have, you can configure it, it's not convenient. So this is an easy way to create a virtual machine that will be isolated from the rest of your network and your host machine, which is going to be a good practice. It can still connect to the internet, and it will work in all other regards, but it won't be able to talk to the network of your host machine. We have bridged adapter, and you can select the host adapter. So this is essentially just connecting your virtual machine directly to your host machine's physical network adapter. You will have your virtual machine right on the same network as your host, and anything your host can connect to, your virtual machine will be able to connect to. Okay, and we have internal network and host only, and these options can accomplish actually the same thing. The only difference is that the host only allows you to create your own virtual network that can also communicate with the host machine, but not the host machine's network. Whereas internal network does not allow your virtual machine to connect to the host, but you have your own private network for other machines. In earlier labs we've used host only. There's just an extra step where you have to create the network. It does seem a little bit glitchy at times. Internal network seems to be a bit more reliable, and for the most part there's no reason why you wouldn't want to use internal network for this. We've got a couple of other options here, and I've never used them before. Having read the documentation, it doesn't sound like they would serve many purposes for people in VirtualBox. Okay, so Windows 1, we selected internal network, and we've built our own network called Internet, basically. All right, there's nothing else on this network. If this is the only device I've configured, so there's no DHCP, there's no other devices. This machine's just on its own on a network and not even configured to use it. Okay. Windows 2, I won't go into the details, but you can see here for the network, same thing. Internal network, internet. Okay, so Windows 1 and Windows 2 are on the same internal network. They have no connectivity to the host, no connectivity to the internet, nothing. They can talk to each other theoretically if you configure them with a static IP address. But we have a much better way. We have our Endian router. In addition to routing and firewall, it also has DHCP, which will automatically provide a network connectivity, a network connection for DHCP clients, which both of these Windows machines are. You turn these Windows machines on, they send out a broadcast on a network asking for a DHCP server to provide them with a network configuration. Alright, and that's going to be our Endian router. So here's the interesting part. A router needs to have at least 2 ports to be able to route traffic. A router routes traffic between 2 different networks, and to accomplish that, it's going to really need to have 2 ports. So we have adapter 1 and adapter 2 enabled here. Adapter 1 is connected to NAT. So VirtualBox is going to provide it an IP address and a configuration that is going to be able to connect to the internet. But other than that, this virtual machine will be isolated from the host and from the network that the host is on. Adapter 2 is connected to that internal network, internet again. So this means that second adapter is connected to Windows 1 and Windows 2. Alright, let's take a look at our network diagram again for a moment. Alright, Windows 1, Windows 2, single network connection, and it's on this internal network segment. My router has 2 ports that outside adapter 1 is connected via NAT to whatever the wide area network is. It's just my office LAN here. So there's actually another device along this chain before it gets to WAN, but we don't have access to it, we don't see it, so I didn't include it in the diagram. That NAT, though, is what is providing this IP address to the outside of the router, that adapter 1. Adapter 2, in software I define this statically, and that's connected to this internal network with these other 2 machines. And that's basically what it takes to build this virtual network. We take a little bit of a closer look at the settings for this Endian router. Down here in network, adapter 1, it's enabled, it's attached to NAT. Now I could change this to bridged, and actually it wouldn't make any difference for my internal network. It would just change how the outside of this router is obtaining its IP address. Instead of obtaining it from VirtualBox's internal services, it's going to be getting it from the office LAN, since it's directly connected to that. Okay, leave that alone. Under adapter 2, it's enabled, it has internal network selected, and there's my internet right there. If I wanted to create a new network, well, I could just change the name, but in this case, of course, I want it to be on the same network as those 2 Windows machines. And that's what the configuration looks like. Once you know what to do, it's actually fairly simple. So let's just start all these devices up again. And let's just test it, see if I know what I'm talking about. Takes Endian a moment to start up and to fully configure itself. Once it does, it will show you the red interface down below, and that's how you know that it's fully booted up. You can see it's still running some things in the background there. We can log into our Windows machines here. We'll open up our command prompt again, cmd. A little bit slow. IP config will show us the network configuration in Windows. And there we have it again. Okay. Let's get this going here. Okay. There we go. Great. And so one thing I always like to do whenever I've set up a new network is to try pinging the gateway. If your client can't ping your gateway, then there's probably something drastically wrong, and you definitely need to look into what's going on with that. So if I type in ping 192.168, I'm on the wrong side. Okay, 168.0.1, and look, that works great. Alright, both of my Windows clients can ping the gateway, all is well. And can I ping Google? Yes, so name resolution is working. That's the first thing it did. Look up Google's IP address. That's nice. And then it pinged public IP address, which is outside of our network altogether. It got responses, so that's all working. And this is a bit better than just opening your web browser and typing google.com, because if name resolution was not working, DNS, then it wouldn't be able to find the IP address for Google, and it would look like your internet connectivity was broken. It wouldn't be, though. It's actually just the name resolution that's not functioning. So we'll get a kind of a more analytical evaluation by pinging a domain name here. We're doing kind of two things at once, but we can see where it fails. And that's about that. These Windows machines are not configured to respond to ping, so I can't ping each other. But if they were, that would definitely work because they are definitely on the same network. And that's how you build a virtual network in VirtualBox. Basically every virtual machine manager will have similar kind of functionality. Virt Manager in Linux has a similar function. It's a little bit more configuration heavy to make it work, but it does work just fine. Proxmox, all of our modern virtual machine managers are designed to do this. Some of the commercial virtual machine managers will hide the feature behind the paid version of it, the pro version of it, so not necessarily going to work in every case for free, but should work in any reasonable system. And that's about that.